Right, today we're working with Global Grid. You will find a PowerPoint in Schoology under Unit 1, Lesson 1. So here we are in Unit 1, and in the Lesson 1 folder, you will see that here's Global Grid, and right underneath it, how can the Global Grid PowerPoint. Okay, so today you're going to be using the PowerPoint to help you complete this. So when we talk about being in this world, like there's buildings, homes, and towns, cities, states, countries, all with a different address. But, there's some places on Earth that don't have an address per se, like not 123 Pine Log, like Mount Kilimanjaro, the Mediterranean Sea, South Carolina as a state. So a way that we can find an address for them is we use this grid system. All right, so today we're going to be looking at lines of latitude plus lines of longitude to make this global grid. These lines of latitude have an effect on the climate, and we use this grid to help us identify locations, or what we call absolute location. So if you ask Siri what your absolute location is, it would give you a series of numbers that actually coordinate to somewhere on that grid. So here we can look and see that on this side of the map we have lines of latitude, and on this side of the map we have lines of longitude. We'll look at those more closely. So here's our circle, and at the very top we have the North Pole. You're going to be matching this on your page over here, so you'll move your North Pole. You have your South Pole at the bottom, and in the middle that is a line of latitude known as the equator. We also have lines that go above from there. This is 30 degrees north of the equator, 30 degrees south of the equator. This line would be 60 degrees north of the equator, and this would be 60 degrees south of the equator. We can also have lines of longitude. Lines of longitude run from north to south. So here you have a line running from the North Pole to the South Pole. We call that the prime meridian, and that is 0 degrees longitude. We're taking it in 30 degrees, but this time we're going east and west of the prime meridian. So 30 degrees west, 30 degrees east, 60 degrees west, 60 degrees east. And together they make the global grid. All right, so let's take a look at if we were to line this out. So this is 0, and we're going to go in increments of 15. Sometimes you'll see 10, sometimes you'll see 15, sometimes you'll see 30. It just depends. But whatever increment they use, they'll use that for both latitude and longitude, both north and south. So we're doing increments of 15. All right, so today we're looking to determine where is this star. So you're going to do your latitude first, 15, 30, 45, and we're going west, longitude, 15, 30, 45. So you should see that as that 45, 45. Our next one is 15, 30, north, but this time we're going to the east, 15, 30 to the east. We don't have numbers here, but we can assume that they're the same. 0, 15, 30, 30 to the south, and 15, 30 to the west. This one, we're going 15 to the south, and 15, 30, 45 to the east. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, when we talk about latitude and climate, latitude has an impact on climate. So here's our 0 degrees, and then this top portion that you see in green, we call this the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. At 23 degrees north, that's your Tropic of Cancer, and at 23 degrees south, that is the Tropic of Capricorn. So when we look at these upper areas above 66 degrees, we know that that's extremely cold area. It's very cold to bitterly. We call it our polar zone. This area in the middle is the hottest part because it's closest to the equator. We call that our tropics or our tropical area, and it is hot. And then this larger area that's in between, that's where most people live. You have hot summers, cold winters, moderate spring and fall, and we call that the temperate zone. So you're going to match that up on these two pages. Okay, so a few review questions that we have, like, which zone do you think most of the world's people live in? So I kind of answered that with this question. Most people live in that temperate. It is the largest area. Some challenges that might come from living in the polar zone. It's really cold. It's hard to find food. So much of the year is dark. So, you have a lot of changes to make. And sometimes people say with that darkness, there's more depression, stuff like that. So those would be some things you have to adjust to. You can't fly out as quickly. Weather's always a concern. People do actually live in the polar zone, mainly in, like Alaska and areas of Canada. There's some people that live in Greenland. Iceland is cold. Now, when you get to the southern polar zone, where Antarctica is, you don't really have a lot of people living there. There's some parts of New Zealand and Tasmania that have some polar, portions at the very tip of their southern portion that have some polar regions, but and people visit there, and a few people live there, but it is not as populated as areas in Europe and North America. Russia has a lot of polar areas, and the Siberian area, not very many people live there either. The tropical zone, it's hot all the time. A lot of areas close to the equator do get a lot of rain, but, it brings out your insects, your mosquitoes, so you have those kinds of diseases. You get a lot of rainwater, which is sitting water, which can, cause some problems with water contamination, things of that nature. And then when we talk about people living in the tropical area, of course people live all along the equator. We're not far from the tropic area. We would be just above the tropics, around the 33 latitude line, and this is 23 in purple. All right, so some other factors besides latitude that affect climate. So if you're near a large body of water like we are, we're near the Atlantic Ocean, and so whenever there's a storm out of the ocean, it has a direct effect on our weather. So we've been having a lot of rain. Well, typically when you look at all the rain amounts, especially when you have a large amount, if you look to see if there's storms brewing out at sea, that's almost a direct indication of the fact that you have that weather is coming from what's happening in that large body of water. Also elevation. So if you've ever gone up in a mountain, you'll see that when you climb the mountain, it gets cooler and cooler and cooler. If you go to Asheville, you can climb Mount Mitchell, which is the highest point east of the Mississippi River in the Appalachian Mountains. If you climb up there to the very top, it changes in temperature 20 to 30 degrees. So if it's 70 degrees up at the bottom, when you get down all the way up to the top, you're going to be pushing the low 40s or even mid 30s. The temperature changes so much in elevation, but elevation does have an effect on the climate. So when we talk about determining absolute location, we have to take our lines of latitude plus our lines of longitude to give us the global grid. That global grid gives us an absolute location. We use GPS today, and GPS uses the global grid, the coordinates, these numbers from this system, to come up with two numbers that tells exactly where you are. We also saw today that lines of latitude have an effect on our climate. We'll talk about that all year. We'll refer back to what line of latitude is it at. That is a climate correlation, and often decisions that people make are based on climate or where they live, their line of latitude. So again, we'll talk more about that as the year progresses. And that is the global grid. Please make sure you've completed all parts and submit.